You ever think about embarrassing shit you did like 3 years ago and are so glad that it's not on the internet for people to see? Yeah, mine actually is on the internet. Hi y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. If you are seeing this video, it means that we have officially hit 200,000 subscribers on this channel, which is absolutely insane to me. First of all, I never even thought we'd get 10,000 subs on this channel when I started. And being that this channel just hit 100K like 3 months ago, it feels surreal. I am so grateful to each and every one of you that subs, that lurks without subbing, that watches, that comments. I'm so grateful. I can't believe we've gotten this far. Now, unfortunately, they don't send out plaques for every 100K. I won't get another plaque unless I hit 1 million, which is insane to think about. But I thought, what would be a better thing to do when we hit 200K than to react to my very first video ever? Now, if you've been here that long, you probably remember that my very first video on YouTube ever, it was a review slash recap of the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett. So right now, we're gonna watch this video together. I haven't gone back and watched any of these videos. I don't watch any of my own videos after I've uploaded them and made sure that they're good, because why would I? We're gonna go ahead and get her done. So here we go. Are we rolling right now? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it with this bucket on my head. It's bad enough I already watched the entire show through this 2-inch slot. I'm not doing that. So, hi all. Okay, I'm sorry, that is a lie. I did not watch the whole episode with the helmet on. I just thought it would be a cute intro, and my dad and I both thought that this would be so clever. This is in his living space, so we ended up just setting up my Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett helmet all the way back in the far right corner. My Fennec Shand helmet is on top of an equipment case. We really tried to create an ambiance here. SnarkyJay cosplay here, and I figured that since the Book of Boba Fett is officially out for all of us to enjoy, why not go ahead and give you my thoughts in what I consider to be Jabba's palace, which is not Jabba's palace at all. It's my living room in Florida, which is just as awful as Tatooine anyway. So, let's get into it. For the non-spoiler part of my review, I gotta tell you, I'm obsessed. Can we just talk about how badly this aged? Like, if you go back and you look through my other titles and reviews for the Book of Boba Fett, you see this excitement just slowly leaving my eyes, which I feel like is also the way the channel has gone. Oh man, if I could go back and warn her. Know that I officially have something to live for again. I don't really know exactly what I expected on account of the fact that my entire love for this character is built on 6 minutes of screen time, I think like 4 lines, and everything in Legends and the comics and all that stuff that was in the extended universe that is now irrelevant. And even though I know Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, they do great work, and when they brought in Robert Rodriguez, who is a huge Boba Fett fan himself. Listen, I have been spouting that bullshit, or I was spouting that bullshit for the entire, like, while it was in development, and I had not quite realized that Robert Rodriguez is the guy behind Spy Kids until after I recorded this one. My dad was like, you know, Robert Rodriguez, like, did all that dumb shit, right? And I was like, oh. So, anyway, alright. I knew that it had to be good, but I didn't know how good. And it's brilliant. If you haven't seen it, or maybe Star Wars isn't your thing, in my totally unbiased opinion, it is probably the greatest thing that has... I'm almost embarrassed. Oh my god. Yo, please. Has ever happened in the history of television. Oh, I can't speak highly enough of it. I think the score is great. Ludwig Göransson, he's the same guy behind The Mandalorian, and they sound all my jump cuts, because I thought it sounded unnatural to breathe on video. We learn some really things. Similar. Like, I'm waiting for somebody to go ahead and remix them. So the score is great. I think the acting is brilliant. I think people have been underestimating Temuera Morrison for a really long time. I think he's brilliant in this role. I know that he only played Jango and voiced the clones in a few things. He's voiced Boba in a few things. But I mean, he really is kicking some major behind. Some major behind. That was back before I figured out I could just cuss and then bleep it out. Aw, youth. to use a more ladylike word. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's really well paced. It's not a spoiler, but they are in fact doing a flashback to present day type thing, which I think is really, really cool, because I think by calling it the Book of Boba Fett, they're basically showing you what he's up to now, but also pulling out chapters from his life. And I think that that is super smart and like a really interesting take on a character that we know really little about, because he's been a man of mystery and all that. And I think that maybe explaining so much about him does take away bit of the mystique and the coolness surrounding him. But I think when they flesh him out as awesome as they're doing so far, it's totally worth revealing the mystery, because what's underneath is just as awesome.
What is
that
underneath?
being said, on a scale of 1 to 10,
what is underneath is just as awesome. Okay, kid. If all, I just wish I had known. I wish I had known. I wish I could go back in time and like whisper in her ear and be like, hey, this is gonna be fucking bad, to the point that you're gonna take down all your Boba Fett stuff and he'll be ruined for you forever.
I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 10. Again, I'm not the most unbiased person. I'm sitting here surrounded by
10.
helmets and wearing a costume that I built based on 2 HD images and like 3 trailers, but you know, whatever. In my unbiased opinion, the show's awesome. I think it's really great so far. They're doing a wonderful job, and that's pretty much all I have to say without giving too much away. That's my non-spoiler review. If you keep watching, you are liable to have things spoiled for you. If you don't care, great. If you whine in my comment section, I'm going to laugh at you because you were warned. That being said, the episode opens with one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. It opens with something that we've all been wondering for years. Boba Fett getting out of the Sarlacc. We watched him make this terrible, pointless, and corny demise in Return of the Jedi, which to me is one of the greatest injustices in the world. I mean, George Lucas gives us one of the coolest bad guys in the galaxy and then accidentally knocks him into a pit and we never hear from him again. But in Legends, some of the comics and some of the novels,
I just also want to point out, like, if you watch me then, the energy is like down here, because even though I'm still like really excited, I want to seem normal. And eventually I gave up on that, clearly.
He did actually make a return. In some of them, he had some kind of telepathic, in my opinion, it was telepathetic storytelling. He had a connection with the Sarlacc and asked it to let him out, and it kind of just spit him out.
It really was dumb.
In most of them, though, he managed to ignite his jetpack and make a fiery escape. Almost what happened. He didn't ignite the jetpack, but he did set the thing on fire from the inside and crawl out. I don't know how many of y'all have seen Parks and Recreation, but Patton Oswalt, who's also the voice of Remy the Rat from Ratatouille, he does a Star Wars filibuster, and he mentions watching the hand of Boba Fett coming out of the sand as he crawls out of the maw of the sand beast. And then
I want to point out that I recently saw an interview with Patton Oswalt where he said that supposedly he was told that that is exactly why they did that. They did it shot for shot because of the filibuster, so I was way ahead of my time on this one. I do also want to point out the editing skills in this are choppy as shit, and right there I should have just put in a clip, and I didn't, because I didn't understand how ripping clips from YouTube and inserting them worked. This took me so long to edit, and it was so stressful because I'm terrible with computers, and I only managed to figure out how to do this slightly. So I'm very proud to see that I can now use clips like a normal person.
That is literally, I'm sorry, Robert Rodriguez watched Parks and Rec and was like, that sounds about right, because that is exactly what he did. And to me, that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in Star Wars, and it was awesome to see him inside of it. We've got so much fan art of Boba Fett covered in Sarlacc slime, surrounded by tentacles, crawling his way out, and finally they show it to us. I was screaming in the first 2 minutes. I was screaming in the first 2 minutes they had me. So once he gets out...
Screaming in the first 2 minutes. She had no idea.
What's his life like? Well, he's having a really, really rough time, and I think that that is brilliant. Where a lot of Boba Fett fans get mistaken is we want to look at him as this man of mystery, the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy, and assume that he's invincible. And that's the thing, is that they're showing us that he's 100% not. The Sarlacc made minced meat of him. He was, you know, stripped of his armor and kind of his honor by Jawas and left for dead. And when the Tuskens picked him up, it's not like they picked him up to help him. They picked him up and turned him into a slave. A lot of my friends have told me that they're really not into this whole thing.
We did.
Watching Boba kind of get kicked around by the Tusken Raiders and, you know, showing a lot of weakness in his fights isn't really the move, I guess. But I tend to disagree. I think that...
Look how calmly I express things. I tend to disagree. I don't have it in me to do that anymore. I don't know if I've just spent too much time on the internet or if I'm just getting old and ornery, like, really early. But I'm, like, listening to myself and I'm like, you know, I tend to disagree. Like, where's your rage? Oh my god. My AirPod just fell out.
Showing him as such a vulnerable character really works. We only think he's that good at his job because we only saw him for 6 minutes. It doesn't make sense.
I would sit here and watch the entire thing, but it is 15 minutes of me slowly recapping the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which is not quite evergreen anymore. So I think I'm gonna skip
Drop right out of the slave one like candy out of a gum dispenser. A seismic charge. If I got to watch Boba Fett drop a seismic charge into the Sarlacc pit and blow it up as his vengeance for it ruining his mug, I could just die happy at that point. We all know what that sounds like. That's super cool. It's poetic justice, it's vengeance, it's coolness. Like, there would just be nothing else. So that's my theory. Probably another highlight for me anyway.
She had theories. She had theories. She had hope. She didn't know. That's the thing, is that I was so much more willing to be excited about these things. I really was just so fresh and enthusiastic because it hadn't been ruined yet. The Book of Boba Fett came after season 2 of The Mandalorian, which was awesome. Oh my god. I feel like I'm like watching a caveman right now.
Is the fact that he refused to be carried when he was, I guess, kind of making his stance in Tatooine. For some, it might have come across self-righteous, but hear me out. I think that that is 100% him showing up and telling people, look, I might be on the throne, but I'm not Jabba and I'm not Bib Fortuna. I'm not gonna sit around and let whatever it is that happens here go on. I know the way
No, baby. It's worse. He's going to let the Spy Kids resolve things for him.
Things work.
Oh my
I've
God.
worked for a lot of you, and I know what we're all about here. So I'm gonna show you guys that I'm down here, and I'm gonna lay down the law with my own
really had
hands.
so much
that,
faith.
for me, epitome of Boba. I was so worried that they were gonna ruin not the sanctity of his character, but yeah, the sanctity of his character. I'm fine. I'm not obsessed. And that moment for me was everything because it shows what exactly his plans are on Tatooine, and that this is not going to be some boring show where it all feels really political and you're just watching it from his point of view of sitting on a chair. He's going to be getting his...
It's not gonna be really boring. It wasn't political, that's for sure. But it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. And the worst part is, literally, if you go and you watch the last review on that show, all of this optimism was gone. If you've listened to anything on this channel in the past 2 years, all of this faith, this joy, even though I'm like speaking right here the entire time, just right here. I'm not, you know, going up and down. I don't know why that was my vibe back then, but I really was crazy about this show. He just
his hands
fucked it
dirty
up.
like we can assume he always has, and I think that keeping that in line is super
No,
true to the
baby.
character and is going to make
We're not
for a
doing that.
great show. All my gripes with the show, which were mainly based around what the design was and that I didn't feel that it was cohesive, and I also didn't feel like it screamed Boba Fett. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm a Fett fanatic, and I have a lot of opinions, especially when they come to Boba Fett. And I had so many problems with the suit originally. I didn't like, you know, the black
As
with
you
the
should have.
high saturated colors originally that they had in The Mandalorian. Everything is a lot more muted now, which I like. And the helmet, which is a different cast than he's ever had, it's actually growing on me. The more I look at it...
I just want you to know that I was so proud of that one because I knew people that worked on the helmet casts, and I've had a lot of like real dedicated Boba Fett fans that were able to pick out different casts and show me what was what, and I was sitting there so proud. I honestly thought somebody's gonna comment on this and they're gonna know exactly how knowledgeable on Boba Fett I am. Nobody said shit about my comparisons of helmets, so it was so irrelevant, but I was so proud of myself. From like a costume designer perspective. Anyway,
in different shots, the more I think it works. I really like it now. They're thrown out the window with this. I have so much faith in the rest of this show. I think it's killer. I think they're setting up a lot of really cool stuff. So far, I think the characterization is right on. They've done a lot of terrible stuff in the comics recently where he's just corny and not correct. This is right.
The comics were the issue. He was corny and not correct in the comics. Oh my god.
Right back on it. And I know for a fact that it's because we have Robert Rodriguez doing this show. He had envisioned Boba Fett's return for years. I think that we've got people that really love the character at the helm of this show.
Don't.
I think we've got nothing but good things to look forward to. And honestly, I say again, it was a 10 out of 10. Every moment I think in the show was brilliant. And my personal highlight was seeing him get out of the Sarlacc pit. I've been wanting that explained to me for years. I want to know how he got into it in the first place because again, I refuse to accept that he was accidentally knocked into the pit to his death. No, I'm sorry. So I hope that they continue so that we can figure out why that happened. Besides that,
we won't.
That moment just, I mean, I want to tattoo that moment of like him slimy and stuck in the pit, like on the inside of my eyes. I want to look at it forever because it was everything that I dreamed of.
If I had done that, I would have f***ing offed myself if I had to remember that every day for how awful this ended up being. My god. Somebody get a meta time machine. Go help me.
It was my wallpaper. There's a particular fan art that I'm thinking of that was my wallpaper for like 2 years. He's still my wallpaper now. It's just not him in the pit anymore. We've graduated. He's past it. He's got a show. I'm not going to keep knocking the guy down every time I unlock my phone. As a Boba Fett fan, fanatic, addict, somebody who has worshipped him for years, and I know that so many of y'all love him as much as I do, which is pretty scary. I think we've got a lot to look forward to. I'm really, really excited about this show. I give it a 10 out of 10 so far. Every minute of that episode was worth watching, and I think that they're really doing great, great things with Boba Fett. That's about all I've got to say on the show so far. I'm gonna go ahead and do a review pretty much for every episode. We'll see how it goes. That's all for me. I've been SnarkyJay, and keep tuning in to the Book of Boba Fett every Wednesday on Disney+.
I wasn't doing the intro yet. Oh, I thought I had already figured out the outro to that. How funny. Wow. Well, that was something. So, okay, we could focus on the fact that I was so wrong about the Book of Boba Fett, which is kind of like where my mind is going. But in the grand scheme of this video, right, the energy of this video is that we've just hit 200K. And therefore my goal here is not to gripe about the Book of Boba Fett, but it's to revisit my first video ever. And to me, I think it's interesting, one, because I learned a lot about editing so far. I have my own intro and outro that always sounds the exact same. Now we've got my little guitar thing at the beginning. We've got music. There was no music in that entire video. Energy-wise, completely different. I'm trying to not move my hands too much. I'm pretty much staying right here the whole time. My energy is just, now I'm a lot more comfortable in front of a camera. My dad was actually behind the camera when we did this one, so I'm actually like talking to him but not talking to him, so that was kind of weird. And I think before I felt like when you put me in front of a camera I kind of had to give you like this news journalistic sort of energy, and now I think I've kind of let that go, and what you get when I'm in front of the camera is just me. It's like if you and I were sitting in a bar somewhere and I was ranting about whatever, that's the kind of energy that I give off and that I try to give off, and that pretty much just comes off naturally. But you know what, going back and looking at that, that's literally from December of 2021, so it's gonna be 3 years and about a month and a half from the time of this video's recording. So it really hasn't been that long, but there's so much personal growth in what I do and so much love that I've developed for my job now. That first video was just kind of a shot in the dark to see what happened. I wouldn't end up going full time with it until like 5 or 6 months later. So this was really just an experiment, that video, and honestly, I don't look at it and cringe. I look at it and can acknowledge there are mistakes and a lot of things that could have been done better, but I'm looking at somebody who was trying something new, who was trying their best, who wasn't entirely comfortable with being on camera in that way, but was figuring it out, and I think that that's really important when we look back at what we've done in the past. You might love to draw, and maybe your drawings when you were a kid were scribbles, and you might look at them and say, oh my god, that was terrible, but that's not a productive way of looking at anything. That was great for your skill level at the time, and so I look at that video, and I think that was great for my skill level at the time. I'm proud of it. I find it a little bit embarrassing, but I'm glad that we've gotten this far, and without that first video, without those awkward initial videos, without all of that, we wouldn't have what I do now. So I'm proud of that. I hope you guys enjoyed revisiting that one with me. It feels like two different people now, and I don't know how to feel about that one. But I guess it could be worse. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I will add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on us finally hitting 200K in the comments below.